Hi, everyone. I'm Ben.
Hello, I'm Ben.
And today I'm going to be taking you on a little Pokemon journey through bot protection on web forms. If you don't know much about Pokemon, that's okay. I mean, you're missing out a little bit, but it's fine. It's fine. Cool. First, let me tell you a little bit about myself. As Adam has introduced me, I'm Ben Rithichai. I'm a front-end developer at Australia Post. I've been there for a bit over 4 years. I'm LGBTQ identifying, which in other words, I'm hella gay. I like video games, and I listen to a lot of pop music. So Carly Rae, Lorde, as Adam mentioned. So if you want to make friends with me, that's how to do it. And here's a picture of me with some of my team. You might recognize this boy here. Funny enough, when I first joined Australia Post, I was under Rick, who normally, well, actually, sorry, mentored by Rick, and then I mentored Adam, and now Adam's emceeing tonight, which is, yeah.
One big happy family.
It's the circle of life. Cool. So anyways, web forms. Who here has never seen a web form before? So I asked the question that way so that in case you didn't want to put your hands up, unless you're Erin who just wants to put her hands up anyways. So you probably have seen some sort of web form in your lifetime on the web. Like, it's unavoidable. They come in various different types. You could say they come in various different forms. I'll leave. Okay, yeah, so you might have seen them through maybe as a form, like a form of survey through Google Forms, or as a checkout on some kind of retailing like eBay. You can even consider search bars and search websites to be a type of form. Essentially, a form is any kind of input on a web page, generally used to send data to a server for processing. The most common types of forms that you'll come across on the web is login and registration form. In fact, you probably used one of these to get here tonight, unless you did RSVP, in which case, so I've established that you've probably definitely used some sort of form before, but let's turn that around. Let's say you have a website yourself with a form on it. Let's say you've got a registration and login form. It's all good. Your customers are using it to sign up, log in. Everything's going great. But then suddenly, bots. So suddenly you notice a massive increase in registrations, a massive increase in registrations. And at first you're like, hell yeah. So many people are coming in and using my website. And then you realize a lot of them are fake accounts. And you're like, oh no. So you're getting all these registration requests, and eventually your backend servers start falling over. It's terrible. Your customers are angry. Your son is crying. Your house is on fire. All around bad times. So how do we prevent this? Well, for one, don't leave your oven on when you leave the house. But in terms of the bot stuff, that's what I'm going to go over today. But first, let's back that up a bit. Not all bots on the web are necessarily bad. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so not all bots on the web are necessarily bad. Hashtag not all bots. So that prompts the question, how do we define a bot? So generally speaking, a bot is any kind of automated program or script created to run an automated task. So on the web, if you have a web bot, it's an automated program or script that runs tasks on the web. It's a pretty broad term, and so I'm going to divide it into three main categories here. We've got the good, the bad, and the suspicious. So, the good. Good bots are bots that benefit either the user or the website owner. An example, web crawlers. These little guys are used by search engines. They gather website contents, and it helps optimize search results and do other cool things like, giving previews of websites on the search engine. Another example of good bots are browser functionality and add-ons and extensions. So these are scripts implemented by the browser to help make the user experience better, and also extensions that are added by users or created by users and added by users to enhance their browsing experience. So for example, a browser, like a lot of browsers have autofill functionality, which when you're on a website, if you've saved information with them, it autofills the form. That's pretty convenient. And also, on the other side of that, there's also password manager extensions that you can install in your browsers, which will fill in the passwords on websites that you have stored credentials on. Not all extensions are there are malicious extensions as well, but the thing is, the general intent of an extension is to enhance user experience on the browser. Another type of good bots are chatbots, transactional bots, info bots, and entertainment bots. So these type of bots are bots implemented by the web page. They're there to assist or entertain users, generally in the form of chatbots. You'll see them, say, a chatbot that will answer your questions, if you have any. Transactional bots that let you perform transactions through the bots. And entertainment bots come in various forms, and so for an example of entertainment bots, a while ago, I say a while ago, like ages ago, Neopets. Does someone here know Neopets? Yeah. No, actually. I wish I had a Pokemon example of this, but Neopets had an event a while ago where they would, across the page, sometimes certain sprites or icons would just appear, and you can click on them to get items. So that's like a form of has some sort of event game. So that's a kind of entertainment bot. It's implemented by the page to entertain the users. Cool. So those are some types of good bots on the web. Now, onto the bad. So bad bots are malicious bots. We don't want them. So an example of a type of bad bot is spam bots. Spam bots send unsolicited information. So this may be in the form of forum posts, blog posts, messages to users, usually to advertise something or to spread viruses. Bad times. Spam bots might also be used to execute repeated actions on your web page. That's also bad. So this might be to do things like affect poll results. So those are spam bots. Now, the next type of bots, malicious bots, we have hackers. So hacker bots, again, a general term, but these are generally bots that try to access unauthorized information, circumvent certain systems and processes, take shortcuts, and go through places that we don't want them to go. Scrapers are another type of bad malicious bots. And what they do is they extract data from websites. So how is this different from crawlers? Because we saw before, crawlers are a good type of bots. So aren't scrapers just the same thing? Not quite. So scrapers are, unlike crawlers visit crawlers kind of go through the web, visit web pages, and gather information about the website, whereas scrapers visit web pages to request information offered by the website. So for example, a crawler can get things like the page name, certain content on the website, but scrapers might actually do queries and requests and get the results of that query and store it themselves. And also generally, crawlers don't store anything. Yeah, so scrapers aren't always intentionally bad, because by definition, they're just getting information from a website, right? But the thing is, scrapers are generally created by some entity, whether it be a person or company, that want to get data from a website to fuel something else. So for example, if you have, you might have a scraper bot that scrapes prices from different retail sites and puts it into their own site to compare them. While it seems harmless, it does cause a load on the site that they're scraping the data from, as they're requesting all of this information from those original sites. It can also be unfair on the providers of that original information if, say, the providers of that original information is providing for free, and the people that are scraping it are then either selling it off or somehow monetizing it. Say, for example, if we have a website with a public transport timetable that's free to access for everybody can get the public transport timetable, and suddenly you have a bot that scrapes that timetable information, puts it in maybe a better user interface, and runs ads on it to monetize off that. That's a bit unfair, as it causes a big load on the original public transport system, website, while benefiting the scraper. So, the next type of bad bots, impersonators. So, impersonators attempt to impersonate people. So these impersonator bots might try to impersonate a specific person, or they might try to just impersonate general human behavior. So by itself, it's not a lot, but it's generally used in conjunction with like a hacker bot or one of the other types of bots to do things. Say, accessing unauthorized information as a hacker, or scraping information if you're required to be human or authenticated to get those information. Cool. So those are some of the types of bad bots. And then we have the suspicious. Essentially, these are bots that aren't necessarily good or bad, but they do raise a flag of concern and things that you might want to keep an eye on. So, how do we identify bots and protect web forms? There are various methods of bot protection on the web, especially for web forms, that I'm going to go over today. I'm going to just be covering the main common ones that are often seen. So, first one, multi-factor authentication. So, who here has heard of multi-factor authentication? Bam. So many people. Yeah, so multi-factor authentication is where you put your user through multiple channels to establish better security. There's actually two forms on the web that I'm going to go over, and that's double opt-in and two-step verification. So, with double opt-in is where after a user submits a form, you get them to confirm that they've submitted this form. You probably see it in email verification. Would you like to confirm your email? Yes. So this helps prevent against bots because it creates a barrier for the bots to perform that action, the task that they automated to do. So in order to, say, register, they now have to, instead of just going through the form, they also have to activate a link in an email. While that's still possible, the more processes that a bot has to do, the less of it they can do. So the more processing that they need to do, the longer it takes. So this double opt-in is good for registrations and subscriptions because registrations and subscriptions, you have like an email to be able to use for double opt-in. It's not quite as useful for things like simple query forms. Like you don't have an email on a search bar to be able to use with a double opt-in. It's like, and it doesn't really make sense. So the next type of multi-factor authentication is two-step. Two-step verification involves sending a code to a channel other than the one you're currently on. So similar to double opt-in, but instead of getting an email, you actually get a code which you then use on the form that you are on. So you don't continue your flow elsewhere, you continue your flow where you are. So this usually involves sending a code to another channel, such as an email, SMS, or an authenticator, such as Google Authenticator or Microsoft Authenticator. And it provides the same barrier for bots as double opt-in. They have to go through another channel to be able to get that code. And it's actually worse for bots than double opt-in because whereas with double opt-in, a bot could actually just go to the email, click the link, and continue their flow. With this, they actually have to be able to get the code, use it, and then come back to the form that they were on and continue that flow. So it's a bit more involved. So again, this is good for login and registration forms because you would be providing an email and an SMS with those. Less useful for simple query forms again. And also another annoying thing is, especially with two-step SMS, it can be tedious if you're traveling internationally. I recently had a friend who was away overseas, and he had two-step verification set up, but on his mobile number. And because he couldn't get the SMS while he was overseas, it was just super annoying. So you couldn't access the app easily. Yeah, so just something to keep in mind when you're implementing or using two-step with SMS. The next method of bot protection on forms are honeypots. So these are hidden fields on forms. And essentially how it works is you have your form, like just your regular form, and there's a field hidden from the user, but still accessible on the DOM. So a bot might see this field and actually enter information in it. So if they do, we can discard that. We can discard that response because we know that a regular user can't see that field and wouldn't have filled it out. Yeah, so it's really easy to implement. So that's one of the great benefits of this. But there's some considerations with it, particularly around screen readers. So you have to make sure that if you're using a honeypot field, you're not only not displaying it for sighted users, but you're also not displaying it for screen reader users. So to make sure to use things like display none instead of visibility none, or just putting an ARIA label on it. And also, honeypots can prevent spam bots, like generic spam bots, but they can be pretty ineffective against purpose-built bots because those are smart enough to just only fill out the fields that they need to fill out. All right, so before we go on to the next method, I was gonna pause for a second to play a game of
Who's that Pokemon?
What was that, Adam?
It's Pikachu.
It's Ditto!
Wrong, it's Ditto. So yeah, this leads me into my next method of bot protection, traditional CAPTCHAs. Traditional CAPTCHAs are tests using human interpretation. So you give a human something to interpret, and this started off as deciphering texts. And once you solve the CAPTCHA knows that you're human because only a human can solve that. So even though it started off as text, it gradually became more advanced, and we now have things like this, where you have to select images with stairs. Somebody groaned. That leads me, yeah, so I understand the groan because sometimes this gets hard. Have you ever tried to, like, who here has struggled with CAPTCHAs? Oh man, cool. We're all on the same page. So yeah, and not only is it hard, once it gets hard, it really impedes the user's journey. Who has actually given up on something because they couldn't solve a CAPTCHA? There we go. But aside from that, it does give a solid protection against bots. It just also sometimes gives you protection from users, which is not great. All right, so the next method of bot protection we have is a technology challenge. So technology challenge is where we check the client's technological capabilities. So what this means is bots want to be as efficient as possible, right? So they generally run on lightweight headless clients so that they can execute their scripts with the least amount of overhead. So these lightweight headless clients tend to omit things such as JS engines or cookie support. So if we detect that a client doesn't have a JavaScript engine or doesn't support cookies, we can suspect that there's something suspicious going on. Next, we've got human interaction detection. So this method is basically detecting natural human interactions on the page. So this is done by taking in various different parameters. Parameters including things such as mouse movements and interactions on the page. And the way it works is they generally feed these parameters such as mouse movements, interaction on the page, into some kind of machine learning to determine what's human behavior and what's not. And that's how human interaction detection determines whether you're human. But the thing with that is that it can, because it's using machine learning, it can make mistakes, which is not good if you're a human and it thinks that you're not a human. Cool. So I've kind of gone through a fair few different methods of bot protection. And you'll notice that each method kind of has a drawback to it. Like multi-factor requires you to have a second factor, for one. Honeypots are just generally ineffective against sophisticated bots. Traditional CAPTCHAs can really impede a user's journey. A bot can be run on a client that meets the requirement, like the minimum requirements for a technology challenge. And human interaction tests have the whole thing with machine learning making mistakes. But if we use these methods in conjunction with each other, we can alleviate some of these gaps and drawbacks. Yeah, so we can use them together. This is actually just a picture of me and Adam in the office. Yeah, so we can use a combination of these methods to help alleviate some of their drawbacks. A good example of this is reCAPTCHA v2. How many of you have come across this checkbox? Yeah. So how many of you have noticed that sometimes when you click this, no CAPTCHA appears? So what's happening there is that it's actually using human interaction detection to figure out if you're a human before presenting you with a CAPTCHA. So it checks things such as like hovering on the actual box, or and apparently it also uses things such as your connection to Google services. So if you are logged into a Google service, you'll have a Google cookie, and it can check some of those cookies and think, oh yeah, I know you, which is a bit creepy. But yeah, so that's some of the parameters that it uses to detect that you're human. But you'll notice that sometimes it still presents you with a CAPTCHA, and that's when you failed their human detection, and they're like, let's give you another chance, because we're not going to block you just because you failed our machine learning human detection. And that's when you're presented with the more impeding CAPTCHA. So this alleviates the two drawbacks of the impeding the user's journey with a CAPTCHA, because most times you just go through with just the tick. and the inaccurate human detection because you give a second alternative. And V3 extends on that and makes it more versatile by actually removing CAPTCHA altogether. So instead, it extends the functionality of the human interaction detection so that you can, once a user has failed the human interaction detection, you can implement your own second method of verification. Maybe it's a multi-factor authentication, send a code because they failed the human interaction, or maybe it's your own CAPTCHA. Cool. So to recap, there's various types of bots on the web. Some are good, some are bad, but even though there are bad bots, there are various methods that we can use to protect ourselves against them. And they're especially useful when used in conjunction with each other. And that is all I have for today. Thank you very much.